Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another week of FPC Radio Live. It's Monday. It's February the 25th. And we're still months away from the start of the NFL season, but rest assured, we do have a lot of juicy free agency and new league year stuff coming up, as well as, John, we're getting closer and closer to the NBA and NHL postseason. So that's always nice to look forward to. Oh, and baseball. I guess baseball's starting soon too, huh?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up baseball, Ian, because Blake Snell, the reigning National League MVP, and he previously won reigning National League Cy Young Award winner, and he was a Cy Young Award winner a few years ago in the American League, remains unsigned, right? So here's a guy who, you think he's a great pitcher or not, he's still the reigning National League Cy Young Award winner, and he remains unsigned. I think that the first major NFL free agent will sign before Blake Snell signs with a baseball team, which is just absurd. I mean, this is where baseball is. No urgency. Cody Bellinger just signed a 3-year, $80 million deal to stay with the Cubs. Baseball just can't help itself. There's no off season of note other than Shohei Ohtani and Yamamoto going with the Dodgers. The rest of it's been really dull.
I mean, look, the trade deadline is kind of the biggest player movement swing all year for baseball. And even that has it used to be kind of the main trade deadline, really. I mean, the NHL and NBA do a pretty good job. Most notably, the NHL, you usually get more hype and a lot of deals happening around that time. In years past, we've seen more player movement in the NFL in recent years than we ever did, because the trade deadline used to be it's kind of like the MLB draft. No one knows it until it's actually happening. It's like, oh, the draft is today. Like, okay, great. I understand there's a lot of, getting sidetracked a little bit. There's a lot of hurdles in terms of trying to entertain and market a MLB draft. But if you want to try to market your sport a little bit better, maybe that's a place to start. But I don't want to get into that discussion. That's for another day. Maybe whenever the hell the baseball draft is, maybe we'll bring it up then. Let me know when it happens. I don't even know. It's probably like June or July or August. I don't know. But but you're right. We're probably going to see more NFL player movement here before Blake Snell signs. And that is crazy to me, John. And look, it's the nature of the business. The NFL has maximized every single stepping stone throughout every single year, whether it's the Super Bowl, kickoff, preseason, training camp, free agency, the draft. They know how to get every ounce of coverage out of it and maximize its earning potential, because, well, everyone's waiting for NFL free agency day, and we know the quote unquote tampering period, which again, every time we bring up the term legal tampering, it's like if you have like a robot and you like tell it to do a 12 different commands at once and it kind of overloads its processor. That's kind of what happens to me every time I hear legal tampering. But we have that period coming up where obviously the couple days before free agency, we basically learn about all these deals, and then free agency is usually pretty active. And I think we're going to get it again this year, just like we do every year. And once again, the NFL will reign supreme in that department.
Right. You got the NFL scouting combine this week in Indianapolis, 2 weeks till free agency. Then we go back to analyzing the draft.
Side note, so that's something that less and less people care about, by the way, the scouting combine.
About the combine.
Yeah.
Sure. Only because the top three quarterbacks have already announced they're not going to throw, and we got to wait to find out if Drake May's going to throw. So we're going to see the first three picks in the draft, and you're not going to see much from them going through this. The days, I remember, I'm so old, Mike Mamula lit up the draft combine and ended up being drafted, I think, 12th overall by the Philadelphia Eagles. So once in a while, you get a few of those guys, you're like, wow, this guy's 6'5", 250, runs a 4.4, and bench press 225 pounds 36 times, physical freak, or whatever it may be. But yeah, it's not what it was before, because there's a huge gap between this and the draft. So a lot will happen. And a lot of players, at the behest of their agents, aren't really participating or doing much at the combine other than a few interviews and a few drills. There's more about the pro days, and that gets stretched out as well. But there's always something going on in the NFL. We just 2 weeks out from the Super Bowl, pick through that, and now you've got the combine, free agency, the draft. You've got whatever player movement's going to take place. It's always at the top of the list of things to talk about.
Yeah, and look, I mean, because there's always notable players that will inevitably be a part. You know what I mean? Like there's, we're going to have Russell Wilson essentially be and that's something I want to talk about, a free agent, because I mean, everyone kind of anticipates he's going to get cut, and it seems like that's the only good move to make at this point, because there's no sense in continuing that relationship if you're Denver. Just rip the Band-Aid off. But he had a nice season last year. It wasn't great. It was certainly better than 2023. But there's going to be a team. I mean, we talked about it last year, John. How many teams at one point were starting backup quarterbacks? There's going to be a team out there that's going to give a flyer take a flyer on Russell Wilson, and I'm preparing myself that it may very well end up being the Patriots, depending on how this all plays out. And I'm going to have to really do some soul searching, because I've talked a lot of I've said a lot of negative things. Not negative in terms of trying to be negative, but I've critiqued his game quite a bit. Let's put it that way. I don't want to make it seem like I'm out there to get him. I just I think he's a little corny, and I think his game was a little it was dying a little bit before he even got to Denver. But compared to what the Patriots had last year, would you consider a Russell Wilson type reunion for a couple of years, or not reunion, but union for a couple of years?
I think that would be difficult, only because the Patriots have the third overall pick in the draft. So if they draft a young quarterback, I don't think Russell Wilson's really a good gap quarterback or bridge holder, right?
Well, because don't assume that they draft a quarterback early.
Well, that's the other thing, right? I mean, maybe they move down from there. I mean, that rumored deal with Minnesota, I would do in a heartbeat. With you get Justin Jefferson, the 11th overall pick in this draft,
Yeah.
and the first.
I'm sold on
Justin
Jefferson. I don't care what else comes with it.
Yeah, really, because if you're not in on a quarterback, you're going to take Marvin Harrison. And is Marvin Harrison ever going to be better than Justin Jefferson? Probably not.
If there's a guy I'm going to take, I'm going to spend a high draft pick on that I think it's probably Marvin Harrison. I mean. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the one thing where it's like, okay, if the Patriots go out there and draft Marvin Harrison Jr. third overall, and they go the veteran quarterback route, I'm okay with that, because I know that eventually down the line in this draft, they're probably going to draft another quarterback. I know everyone's throwing the name Spencer Rattler out there because he looks like Patrick Mahomes. It's like, just because he looks like him doesn't mean he's going to play like him. But the reality of it is, maybe they do go that route, and then all of a sudden, and this is something that is certainly something that might attract teams, is that like Russell Wilson isn't going to have to take a big deal. You're not going to have to pay a lot of money to Russell Wilson. If you want Kirk Cousins, you're going to have to pay him some money, and he's coming off a injury at 35 years old. Like, at least with Russell Wilson, I think you can anticipate what you're getting, and you're not going to have to pay a lot to get him, because, well, he's got a lot of guaranteed money from Denver. And, for him, and I imagine for him, and this is the downside when it comes to the Patriots, is I would assume that this would give him his choice of whatever team out there needs a quarterback, and this would prioritize maybe the team's chances of competing, because he says he wants to win 2 Super Bowls in the next 5 years, which, hey, look, it's more reasonable than saying he trains 19 hours a day. So, I'll cut him some slack, John. But the reality of it is, in order to do that, he's going to have to go to a team that's, kind of on the cusp. And look, I'm not saying the Patriots can't be, because they do. Again, I keep going back to, they have money to spend. They have some high draft picks and draft capital to work with. So they could give themselves the best opportunity for a quick turnaround. Absolutely. But, again, are you, if you're Russell Wilson, are you going to go to New England? And if you're New England, do you believe that Russell Wilson has anything left in the tank? Because he's not young, but he's not necessarily terribly old. And if I don't know, again, I don't know, John. I think that's the intriguing thing specifically about this Patriots offseason, is that, well, there's a lot of options, a lot of avenues that can be taken here.
Yeah, I think the best landing spot for Russell Wilson might be Atlanta. They have some really nice offensive weapons. They're in a weak division. His wife is from Atlanta, Ciara, so there's that part of it as well.
Playing in
And
a
again,
dome
like you
half the
said,
time.
that's always appealing to older quarterbacks. And again, Denver's going to pretty much pay his salary. You don't have to give him a ton of money to be your quarterback. So that could make some sense for Atlanta. Maybe with the 8th overall pick, they draft J.J. McCarthy and let him develop for a couple of years behind Russell Wilson, or they go ahead and draft a tackle, a wide receiver, whatever. It appears to me in that 9 of the top 10 picks are going to be offensive players, whether it's quarterbacks, wide receivers, or tackles. That's just the way this draft is being laid out. So Atlanta makes some sense. I know Pittsburgh's been thrown into the mix a little bit, but I heard some national pundits over the weekend. It makes a ton of sense that Ryan Tannehill would make sense with Pittsburgh only because Arthur Smith is now the offensive coordinator with the Steelers, and he got some good play out of Tannehill when he was the offensive coordinator with Tennessee. So maybe that's something that the Steelers would do. So you get kind of these veteran quarterbacks that are going to move about. But the Patriots, Marvin Harrison obviously is appealing, but do you want to pick Marvin Harrison 3rd overall and exactly who's throwing him the football? You end up with Garrett Wilson with the Jets, who's had back-to-back 1,000-yard years, but he hasn't been able to fulfill his potential because who's been throwing him the football? Mostly Zach Wilson. That didn't work out so well.
Well, and
those
that's
are things that you have to really look at.
And that's the thing too. It's like, I mean, if do you go out and get Marvin Harrison in the hopes that, well, because again, you got to assume at this point, if Russell Wilson's a free agent, he's likely would have signed at this point, or at least Kirk Cousins or whatever veteran quarterback would be a reasonable, like if they're going to go to the veteran quarterback route. I'm not talking about going out and getting what's the kid from the Bengals? Actually, I think he just went back to the XFL or UFL or whatever.
AJ McCarron.
Yeah, AJ McCarron. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't mean going out and getting a journeyman veteran that's done absolutely nothing in this league. I mean, there's a couple options out there. You get Russell Wilson, potentially Kirk Cousins, maybe Baker Mayfield. If that's the route you're going to choose, go that route. Don't cheap out and just go get a guy that's marginally better than Mac Jones. Because at that point, you might as well give Mac Jones another chance and just put all your eggs in building around what could be help for him or a quarterback next season. But the reality of it is don't waste and go out and get the same guy that Mac Jones is. You know what I mean? Like, just if you're going to do that, just give him another chance at least. I don't want to go. Trust me, I don't want that. I'm perfectly happy with team and player moving on in different directions. So, but yeah, look, I like Atlanta for a potential Russell Wilson landing spot. He's kind of a little bit too old, I think, to go take a backup job somewhere in hopes that maybe a year later, like he's not going to rejuvenate his career. I think he's a little bit too old for that. I mean, I think he wants to go and start or at least compete for a starting job. So, maybe the Rams are out of the question, but if Matt Stafford wasn't there, maybe you know what I mean? Like teams like that. Mm-hmm. I know there's been this, like someone's thrown out the idea of him coming and backing up Aaron Rodgers or start. No, that's not going to happen. This isn't Madden. Again, he's not going to go sit behind Aaron Rodgers and it's just not going to happen. That'd be the most awkward dynamic. Don't you think, John? Like a quarterback room, like Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson.
That would be a disaster waiting to happen. Plus, you're talking about Russell Wilson going to the Jets to back up Aaron Rodgers. We do remember who the offensive coordinator is with the New York Jets, right? It's Nathaniel Hackett,
right,
who was disastrous with Russell Wilson the one year they were together in Denver. So how would that work? No, Russell Wilson's still good enough to start. He is. I mean, I think he's one of the 32 best quarterbacks in the world. Is he the 20th best quarterback? Maybe. We had a decent year last year, 28 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. I mean, again, you can't just look at the stats, but he was okay. I think certainly good enough to be a
much better than year one. I mean, and that
was a disaster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, again, that's the thing. It's like, are you going to overvalue that improvement, or are you just going to take it for what it is and say, okay, this is what Russell Wilson is. He is a like you said, top 15 to 20 quarterback, which for a team like the Patriots, like we keep bringing them up, that's an improvement. Okay. Like, let's be honest. That's an improvement. That's a big improvement. So if you do want to put your invest in other areas like offensive line or like going out and getting a game-changing wide. I mean, when's the last time the Patriots had a game changer at wide receiver? Randy Moss. I don't even have to wait for a response. And before that, Terry Glenn.
Oh man.
Maybe.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, Deion Branch, I love. But
yeah,
he wasn't a game
not.
changer.
Yeah, I mean,
he was an MVP, but he wasn't a guy that a game changer to me is the whole week leading up to the game that the defensive coordinator of the opposing team is trying to figure out a way to stop that guy. Rob Gronkowski, obviously, but he's a tight end.
Yeah, I mean, like, I mean, like wide receiver specifically that position. Yep. Because again,
and
I mean,
before that it was Stanley Morgan.
Yeah,
a guy like that.
So they're
going back to my youth.
Right.
That's how long ago that was.
And so, like, that's really hasn't been a position that the Patriots have coveted. Now, again, there's reasons for it. For the past, majority of the past 25 years, you've had Tom Brady, and you didn't necessarily have to. Maybe you should have. Just think of what life could have been like had they had more. Maybe not more Randy Moss. I mean, look, if I would have loved for Randy Moss to have spent more of his career, certainly more of his prime with Tom Brady, because then I don't think we're talking about these silly GOAT arguments right now. I mean, no one's even considering anyone else. But the reality of it is they just didn't have that, and they haven't had that. And I think we're seeing, and we've talked about it on this show a lot, that in the past it's not necessarily been like, it's great to have those guys. But we saw, again, at the end of the day, Super Bowl 42, it didn't really matter that you had Randy Moss because, well, your offense was stonewalled a bit. But in this day and age, the way this game is played now, having a bit more dynamic player on the outside, certainly for a young quarterback or even a past their prime veteran, that's a pretty nice value, and certainly one that could, I don't know, I don't think the fan base needs rejuvenating, but put a little bit of energy into how this team's viewed, because quite frankly, John, I think it wasn't terrible. I mean, look, the season itself stunk, but I think the offseason has been worse for a number of reasons. One, I think the whole Bill Belichick thing is still, we'll see how that plays out. I have no doubts in Gerard Mayo. I think the general reception to the video version of the Dynasty book has been lukewarm at best, and has come across more so as a Robert Kraft PR campaign as opposed to anything. So I don't think they're buying themselves any goodwill that way. I mean, look, this may the motive may have been to help his and get more support for his Hall of Fame case, and it may be doing at least locally doing the exact opposite, because I think if you were to ask people a couple months ago, there would be far more support. Now I think a lot of fans are a little irritated how that's going. So again, getting back to the point, maybe they decide to go and say, look, Marvin Harrison Jr., he's got the name, he's got the cachet, he's got the ability to change what this offense has been, which has been an absolutely stagnant pile of bleep the last couple of years. Let's be honest, that's what it is. I mean, it is the most undynamic, boring thing to watch on television every day. Like, I'd rather watch like literally paint dry on television than watch the Patriots offense. So maybe you start, or I mean, again, this isn't going to be starting. You presumably would have an idea of who your starting quarterback will be, unless you're going the rookie route at this point. But maybe just take that big swing, and then use the rest of your draft capital to build some other, bring in some other pieces, because like I said, John, they're not terribly far off. This is not a team that is just, they're not the what did the Saints that have minus 40 million in cap space. They're not in that type of predicament. They've gone through these hardships, so they've set themselves up nicely. How they approach and how they go from here obviously will dictate how the future of this team is for the foreseeable future. Because if you screw this up, if you overpay and again kind of go 2004, 2005 Boston Bruins, you're kind of screwed up for the foreseeable future.
Right, because you'll have a lot of bad contracts. If Russell Wilson's your starting quarterback, and Marvin Harrison Jr. is your star wide receiver, at least there's some excitement there,
Well,
right?
and
Like
what does Russell Wilson do well? He throws the deep ball well, and he makes
sure
big
does.
plays with his arm. So, maximize, try to set him up for the most success. Um, get some excitement around the offense, because again, I think the offense comes out and people go to the concession stands. Like they're just like,
Hmm.
what's the point? They're more likely to score on defense than they are on offense. So
Yeah, I mean, I think the Kraft family's going to have to weigh into that. Look, the Patriots have been the dominant sports team probably since around 2007. I think what happened was with Spygate, the undefeated season, that's when the fan base just, it seems like it doubled and tripled because it was really an us against them mentality, right? Up until that point, you could make a case it was the Red Sox and Patriots kind of sharing the town. But since that point, it's been all Patriots. Well, they're potentially going to lose that stranglehold. Look, it's the NFL. I get that. That's what people talk about year round. But if the Celtics go on a run and win a championship, I mean, this could become a Celtics town. It did happen back in the 80s with Bird, McHale Parrish, Dennis Johnson, and all those guys. But just at least create some excitement so that 13, 14-year-old kids may want to order shirts. Like, do you know of a 13 or a 14-year-old kid that's, going on Fangraphs or wherever that they get a Mac Jones shirt? That probably never happened. I mean, one of the least exciting quarterbacks I've ever seen. The wide receiver group is meh. Like kids like quarterbacks, and they actually like wide receivers even more. I mean, I keep bringing up Justin Jefferson. If you were able to get Justin Jefferson here with Russell Wilson at quarterback or someone, that you're going to start selling a lot of jerseys and getting excitement and guaranteeing sellouts and all of that stuff and corporate sponsorship. Like at some point, corporate sponsorship is probably going to look and say, what are we investing all this money into when the team is so damn boring and irrelevant? I mean, I know it's the NFL, but if your team is boring and irrelevant, there's going to be an issue with that.
yeah, and look, like I said, I mean, you're already seeing what 20 years of dominance, how much equity that buys you. It doesn't buy you much. It really doesn't. And look, I mean, some of the criticism is justified. Some of it's a bit from a spoiled part of the fan base, but nonetheless, it's still criticism, and that's something I'm sure that Robert Kraft isn't hopefully going to like too much. If he's, I think I think he reacts very much to positive and negative criticism.
True.
So and that's part of his ego. I mean, that's part of his positive things about him and flaws about him. So maybe he'll get the reaction that the crowd or the fan base is giving. And look, maybe I'm kind of in a bit of an echo chamber here and seeing what I want to see, but the reaction from most of the people is that this is kind of a very poorly well, actually very perfectly timed on their behalf hit job essentially on Bill Belichick, and just something that was not necessarily the dynasty, but people are calling it more about the controversies, because that's what it's all about, it seems. So which is unfortunate, because it would be nice to have seen more of the bigger picture. I know one of the big criticisms was there was barely a mention of the 21 game winning streak. Like the formidable years of forging this dynasty, 03 and 04, were barely mentioned. It was more about some of the other stuff.
It's turned into the dynasty at some point.
Yeah.
And you really look at this, it is a hit piece on Bill Belichick and also Bill Parcells at some point. But look, I wonder if the Patriots win 8-9 and Belichick was coming back to coach his 25th season, this thing would not have dropped, right? Because these interviews were done last spring, last summer. And the trailer for this came out 3 days after the loss in Germany. And the reports were, after that loss in Germany to the Colts, that Kraft had made up his mind and he's going to move on from Belichick. Maybe gives the go-ahead to Netflix, Apple, to say, go ahead, we're gonna run this thing because he's going to be out and, all gloves will be off. Because that's the way it feels. Again, if Belichick's coming back, there's no way they're dropping this thing at this point.
No.
Going into another season where Kraft is essentially taking credit for all the good things and blaming everybody else for the bad things, which is exactly what he's done.
And this is the funny part, and the irony of it is that I've never been a Parcells to the Patriots Hall of Fame guy. But you know what? I'm starting to come.
I always have been.
I'm starting to come around because just by virtue of some of the things, just by dealing with Robert Kraft, I almost feel like I don't blame him necessarily. Like, yeah, I mean, if push comes to shove, I'm still gonna hold some bitter feelings of the way, he handled things upon his exit and everything like that, and how I really do think it had a huge impact, obviously, on that Super Bowl game. But I mean, geez, John, like at this point, I almost don't even blame the guy. I'm like, because it just seems like more of the same. And then again, it makes it even more remarkable, kind of what Bill Belichick did. Kind of keeping things in check for so long. It's funny how quickly you can almost, again, flush your goodwill out the window. And Joel asked, do we worry that Kraft could be turning into a Jerry Jones? And I'm like, I think he already is. We just haven't seen it in public yet, but now we are.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could take the three coaches that he's employed before hiring Gerard Mayo, Bill Parcells, Pete Carroll, and Bill Belichick. If you got them together, I don't think they have many good things to say about Robert Kraft. I just don't. Obviously, Parcells, it was the falling out in his final season. Pete Carroll, I don't believe, was a fan of Bill Belichick. I mean, he talks about when he first got here, Kraft said, we're not the San Francisco 49ers, because the 49ers were known as the best ownership group in all of sports.
Right.
They took care of their coaches, their players, their flight. And this is going back 25, 30 years ago. When they would fly to and from games, they had the best food on the planes. The facility was impeccable. They treated their players right. Every player wanted to play for the 49ers. And that's not necessarily the case with the Patriots. And I still think more and more that this troika of Belichick, Kraft, and Brady, the guy keeping it together was actually Brady. And in terms of, he may have had the smallest ego of the three, and we know he has a huge ego, as he should, as the greatest quarterback ever. I think he kept it all in line, and that Kraft and Belichick, supposedly the older guys, the more experienced guys, had even bigger egos than Brady. And once he left, it just went haywire. Obviously, the play on the field is explained by the record, but I think Brady was the guy that kept this whole thing together. It's almost like the group, the police, like Brady Sting, right, and Stuart Copeland and whoever else, the third member of the police, was Kraft and Belichick. Like
Pavarotti, Domingo, and
exactly.
the other guy, right?
The other guy. Yeah, exactly. There's always, when you go to a troika, one that stands out above the rest and still was able to be okay on his own and win a Super Bowl, where the other two have been like, what have they done without this quarterback? So
it's a good look. It's a good thing. Look, I think personally, I think if you look beyond the propaganda, I think this makes Bill Belichick look better, and you can kind of see how the guy's just always been the same. He always just takes the high road. That's kind of what it is, and in that regard, he's not going to get up there and maybe a couple of years from now he participates in a tell-all book. You never know. Mm-hmm. But he's not going to go up there and take use this as some opportunity to take pot shots at Robert Kraft. Even if he's asked about it now, John, he's not going to do that. He's going to give you the same boring non-answer answer.
Right.
But that's who he is. And it's like, you almost have to respect that far more than watching something that is essentially looks like it's just kicking him on the way out. Because like you said, I don't think you go through with this had they, expected him back or whatever. So I mean, I don't know. It's just unfortunate. It's unfortunate that, what could have been a great, look back at what was 20 years of dominance has turned into really a political propaganda piece, and it's unfortunate. So, but
yeah, and I think a lot of it too is it made for Patriots fans or is it made for football fans? Because there's a huge difference there. Like Patriots fans want, okay, let's spend one series on the 03 season and one on the 04 season and all of the winning, whereas maybe football fans who aren't Patriot fans, who actually may not like the Patriots, want more of the dirt.
Well, I think there's a place I think there's a place for both. That's my point. Make
them longer, right? They're averaging around 38 minutes, so why not make them 48 minutes? It's not like people are not going to watch it. and include everything. Throw it all in there. I know
Yeah.
that just whitewashed. Oh, by the way, they won back-to-back Super Bowls and won 21 straight games.
Right.
That actually formed the dynasty. They're not a dynasty without winning back-to-back Super Bowls.
And again, I mean, an incredible when you break down that 2-year stretch, that 2-year run, it was just incredible. I mean, 34-4 over two. I mean, it's absurd. So yeah, it's look, who knows? Again, we'll kind of bring it back full circle as we wrap it up here. But again, maybe this is leading to Russell Wilson and Marvin Harrison saving the day in New England to get us to 10 wins, maybe 11. But we'll see. But yeah, look, I mean, it's the exciting thing about this NFL offseason is that even teams like the Patriots have a chance because hey, as bad as it was last year, maybe they can be the Houston Texans and turn it all around this year. So we'll see what happens. But we'll be watching and keeping track more and more of over the course of the NFL offseason. And of course, we'll be gearing up quite a bit for free agency here soon. So I'm pretty excited about that. I know everyone else is as well. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.